Hi all, I'm Farnaz Jahanbakhsh, and I'll be presenting the paper Understanding Questions That Arise When Working with Business Documents that I worked on during my internship at Microsoft Research, along with my amazing mentors Elnaz Nouri, Robert Sim, Ryen Wright, and Adam Fourney. Many systems have been increasingly incorporating intelligent digital assistants to help people be more productive, at home as well as at work, for example, for scheduling meetings or for managing task lists. But one workplace area of interest that hasn't seen much progress in this regard is documents. An assistant in this context would help people consume written documents or perform complex tasks on documents more quickly. But to achieve this vision and build an agent that is prepared to handle a variety of requests from the user, we first need to understand what types of assistance people would want as they're working on their business documents. Aren't there already datasets for document Q&A that can tell us the types of assistance people want? Most datasets for document question answering contained factoid questions that were generated by crowd workers who were given a collection of documents and were tasked with generating questions for those. And some datasets contain search queries on documents found on the web. Now, why aren't these enough for the context of a document assistant that we're envisioning? Well, because first, the documents in these datasets were in their final published form. And second, query generators in these datasets often assumed or had the role of a reader, with only limited knowledge of what the document contained. And neither one of these is necessarily true when people are interacting with business documents and need help with them. Business documents could be under development and may not be finalized yet, and the users who need to work with these documents may have prior interactions with them and may not want to only read but also review or edit the document. So to understand users' actual needs in this setting, it's important that we involve authors, reviewers, and readers of such documents in the process of generating queries. In addition, for these questions to have ecological validity, we need to collect them in situ, as users are working on their documents and their information needs arise. This brings us to two of our research questions. What types of document-related questions do people desire support with from a digital assistant? How are the distribution of questions different depending on whether the user is an author, reviewer, or reader of the document? We expected that answering some of the potential questions would be beyond the capabilities of current systems, and there may be a need for human intelligence. We hypothesized that if a Q&A system in this domain were to be deployed to accommodate user needs, at least for the present, it would need to incorporate human workers. And that brings us to our third research question. What skill sets and roles are needed from human respondents to accommodate requests in a human-in-the-loop document Q&A assistant? We conducted 2 user studies to answer our research questions. In the first study, we used an experience sampling method to collect users' questions about their documents. This we did through a Microsoft Word add-in that we built, which at random points throughout the day, when a user was working on their document, would prompt them and ask what question they had about the document at that moment. The prompt would also ask a few follow-up questions about the context. For example, who the user believed could answer the question best, and how long it would take the user themselves to answer the question. In addition, we automatically collected some metadata about the document, such as who the author was and who was the most recent contributor. Users could also submit a question whenever they wanted, without having to wait for the prompt, or even refrain from answering whenever prompted. We recruited 59 users who were employees of Microsoft to participate in this study. They installed the add-in and submitted questions for a week. The experience sampling in Study 1 was a step along the path to our vision of a hybrid human-AI document Q&A system. But we also wanted to explore our research questions in the context of an actual prototype of the type of Q&A system that we ultimately envision. So as a second study, we designed and developed a human-in-the-loop system that collected users' questions about their documents and provided responses to them. The system consisted of an AI component and human workers who supervise the AI and answered questions if the AI failed to provide a satisfactory answer. In this study too, users submitted their questions about the document through a Word add-in. With each question, users submitted a shared link to the document if they consented to the digital assistant or a human knowledge worker accessing the document to answer the question. Once a question had been answered, the answer would appear below the question in the add-in, and the users would receive an email notification about the answer. The knowledge workers view contained all the questions submitted by users. As each question arrived, the workers performed the task of determining whether the question was answerable or the type of the question, for example, if it was about the document's content, or its metadata, or its visual style, and so on, whether there was any specific domain knowledge needed to answer the question, etc. The workers did different workflows for answering questions of different types. For example, for answering content-related questions, they would access the document using the short link, copy-paste the document's text and the question into a custom UI frontend for the ML Q&A model, and they would change the answer if it was unsatisfactory. 41 participants recruited from Microsoft participated in this study and worked with the add-in for 2 weeks. To answer our first research question about what types of questions people want assistance with, we categorized the questions of both of our studies based on what type of information they were asking for and where that information was available. Here's the overview of the categories. We had questions asking about the metadata of the document, others about how to perform a specific task in Microsoft Word, questions about the content, some of which required some amount of reasoning, questions about the written or the visual style of the document, and questions looking for information that was not even in the document and which could be found either in public resources or within the company, or which needed to be directed to domain experts, and so on. I encourage you to read about the full taxonomy in our paper. What was interesting was that there were only a few questions that the AI could answer, and the rest had to be answered by human knowledge workers. The types of questions that the AI could handle were limited to factual, content-related questions, because for those, the AI could retrieve a passage from the document. The finding that the AI couldn't handle most questions suggests that, at least for the present, the type of tool that we envision needs to employ a combination of automation and human intelligence. But the questions, documents, and the human-generated responses of a hybrid Q&A system can serve as ecologically valid training data for building future Q&A models. To answer research question 2, we examined whether the types of questions a user asks about a document vary by the user's role in the document. For example, if they're the author, a reviewer, or a reader. We found that the user's role was in fact a factor in the type of questions that they asked. For example, authors were often concerned with performing specific operations in Word or finding information external to the document. Readers, interestingly, also asked questions about external information, but those information needs had arisen because they had encountered something in the document's content that they didn't have enough context for. So it's not enough to only ask readers or people unfamiliar with the document about their questions. Their questions would be different from what users with other roles would ask. Now about our third research question. We found that many of the questions that users would want help with can't be answered by an AI, and that human knowledge has to be incorporated into the document Q&A system that we envision, at least for the present. But who should the human respondents be, and what kinds of roles and skill sets should they have? In our study, the types of respondents needed included the document author, document collaborators, experts in various domains, for example, finance, legal, marketing, or software engineering, and human workers with a more generalist skill set. So, a document assistant would need to classify and route questions to the appropriate respondents. In our paper, we suggest ways this could be achieved. And we further discuss opportunities for automating the handling of different types of questions in this domain. I invite you to check out our paper to learn more.